Jabulani, welcome to Men Don't Talk United. I know you're an avid Liverpool fan. We won't get into that, but I think that's good for people to know. You also love your rugby. You're an All Blacks fan. I myself am a Springbok fan. I've been a Springbok fan since '95. So it's always good to have two rugby people to chat, because that means you've got something in common. But we were catching up before, and I know again, in terms of just kind of like sport, because I always feel like it's good to get that out there. You and I both enjoy golf, and I thought it would be cool just to get you on and just have a chat. To be honest with you, and just maybe talk about a little bit about mental health, or just maybe can you tell us what you've been up to since the latest lockdown started?
Yeah, man. Thanks, and I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to come and chat with you. I think the last time we kind of had a conversation around this, interestingly enough, it just flowed between the two of us. So hopefully that's what's going to take place today, and just share our experiences. So lockdown for me has been, particularly the second one, to be frank, has been a bit difficult. Right? I prepared myself initially when the first one happened that this is going to be a 3-month thing and we're going to be done with it, right? Then the second one came about and you're like, okay.
What do you do now?
But it's going to end, I thought it was going to end. And when they shut us down again in December, was it end of November going towards December? I was just like
December.
No, man.
I can't remember.
Yeah, it was around December, man, because they promised us that up until Christmas, at least all would be open and so forth. So that was a bit of a challenge. And to be frank, I had to kind of change what I was doing to adapt to it and to adjust. I had spent too much time at home. And just to, if I can just take this story back to pre-lockdown, my wife and I relocated to this country in December. So I
Is it the December just gone?
December 2019.
Oh, okay.
So that was just before the lockdown started.
Yeah.
So I literally just arrived in this country and going through the process of, trying to settle, look for a job and all sorts. And everybody knows what kind of, the challenges that has and where your mind can be at. So in terms of mentally, I was kind of going through a bit of strain because I wasn't getting, in a sense, the responses I'd expected arriving in the country. But fortunately for me, like a week before the lockdown happened, I got the best role ever, like that I'd actually been wanting and had never seen it being offered. And I started working the week Boris shut down. So I literally remotely onboarded and joined this company. So it's a bank that I was working for in London. So dream come true, man. I've come to the big city, London. I'm in the financial districts, So that was cool, but Boris had shut it down.
Yeah.
Now, for me personally, as an individual, like I work through relating and engaging with people. Like that's how I do face to face. I struggle with the telephone. Like even just texting, I need to talk to people. I need to hear your reactions. I need to see, what's going on. So I couldn't do that. And it was the most uncomfortable experience for me for the first, I think, nearly 2 months because our video conferencing wasn't working. So just take this back is to say, I had to then find a way to adjust now. And it took me a while and my mind struggled with it for a bit. But as I, kind of talked to a couple of friends, started talking to more people at the office, I got comfortable. But, we'll come and visit that at a later stage. But just wanted to just show my intro there.
Yeah.
So I understand the frustrations of that. Then you get into lockdown, you can't go to the office, you can't do all sorts. But eventually we're allowed to. So I start making 1 or 2 trips there. I've been in this country a short time. And then we, get to third lockdown. I said to my wife, like, I don't know how I'm going to manage this one now. Like, I was just now getting used to being out and about and learning the country that we're in. So things I'd let slide was my physical activity. I'd been playing golf, but I'd stopped doing a few things. I wasn't doing as much gym and exercising and running that I used to. And with mental health and so forth, it's not just mental health, but it's all well-being that encompasses it.
Yeah.
And for your well-being, it's a physical well-being, it's a mental well-being, it's a psychological well-being, and it becomes a financial well-being. So all those four aspects then build up in total us being happy or or how we then function in the world.
Yeah.
So my physical side had gone down, my social side had been taken down, my mental side was struggling because now I couldn't do what I wanted. But financially, cool, things were not an issue, so I could manage that. So I had to change a few things and started exercising properly again. So I wake up every morning and do an exercise now. Started losing weight again because I had put on a few kgs. So that started giving me energy now on a daily basis. I started finding different things to do now to keep myself also busy away from work. So I've got some projects that I'm now starting to do and building up new skill sets just to give me a different perspective on life and just to give me a bit of energy. Because sometimes that's what we need as people is
Yeah.
there's the day-to-day that we do. You can't get out, but what else can I do to keep active? So I started doing that. Then I started taking walks now because I'm like, wow, I'm stuck in the evening. I'm stuck at home all day. So every evening I pick up my earphones and I go for about an hour and I walk. Usually it's about, in this country's terms, I'm still getting used to it. I think it's about 4 miles or so. So I'll do about a 4 mile walk in about an hour, just try and make it quick. But in that time, I do podcasts and do all sorts just to, learn from others. Like this morning, for example, just to share, I was listening to Draymond Green. Draymond Green, yeah, he's the NBA player for what's this? What's that team? Golden State. Played for
Oh,
Golden
Golden
State,
State
I think.
Warriors. Yeah.
Golden State Warriors, yeah. So I've always understood him as a crazy, insane dude. Like, it never made sense to me what is up with this guy. But when I was walking and listening to his podcast and his experience in life, it kind of tells you why. What he was battling, what the challenges he was battling with, the experiences he had, and the support he had received. And that just gave me insight to say, guys, like, which comes to our question about, I know I might be jumping around just a little bit, but it comes
No,
to our
that's fine.
question about why don't men talk?
Yeah.
With you and I then, when I spoke to you last time, I said, I think the way to approach it is, why should we? Why should we talk? What's the benefit of talking?
Yeah.
And what Draymond Green was saying this morning, just talking about his experiences, is he was going through a difficult challenge and he called Kobe of all people. Now, Kobe had been known as this guy who is cold, ice cold, doesn't help people, he's all about himself, he's selfish.
Yeah.
And it's like, that was such a misconception.
Yeah.
I called this man and he gave me a piece of advice that I've never forgotten. I can't remember the exact words he said to him, but he gave him a piece of advice that drove him. And what happened? This guy is now a 3-time NBA champion. And he's like the core of their team, like he drives that.
Yeah.
But it was all from a conversation. So what was it? It was the benefit of that. Someone who has gone through an experience gave him a tool to manage the pressure and the stress.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you and I talk, and we'll talk about golf sometimes, and I'll share swing, for example, analysis with you, and I'll say, why am I sharing it? It's just because somebody has given me an idea of how to fix what is currently going wrong. So that's the angle that I kind of see when we're talking about well-being or mental health or physical health. It's like, go talk to somebody, get that help, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that you know how to better do things. It can work with relationships. If you're having a challenge, sometimes talking to a friend and saying, this is what I'm experiencing, they could have experienced the same and give you a tool just to manage it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think part of the reason why I'd wanted to also continue and have this convo is to say, how do we change our mindsets to the positive, and how do we get the benefits of those engagements?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? But the question about why we don't, I would never be able to answer that, if I'm frank, because everybody has so many different experiences
It's difficult.
that have created who they are right now. It's the support you could have had as a child, or whatever the case might be. But I know I've digressed. The question was really just about how we've coped during this period. So I think also my wife, I have a partner who we literally share everything. Like I can't hide from her. You know what I'm saying? And we support each other to the end. Like when she's going through a difficult time, or she's working, whatever the case might be, she knows number one supporter is me. There shouldn't be a question about it. And it helps her confidence as a person. So now it's also helped me, because when I am having challenges or struggling with setting up my businesses or whatever the case might be, all these projects I'm working on, that's the person I'll go and talk to. Say, here's what I'm experiencing. This is my challenge. What do you think? And then she'd be like, okay, because I know you did things 1, 2, 3, right? Like, yeah, why don't you try this and see if that approach helps? So the benefit of now having that is whenever I'm having experiences, I can go to my wife, because she's my number one, she's my BFF. You know what I mean? And
Absolutely.
that's who I can talk to. I know some husbands find it difficult or uncomfortable. And I'm like, but if you've chosen this person to live the rest of your life with, how can they not be number one call?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? So how I've coped is just doing things like that, building that relationship. We've been stuck in the house together for a year and a half, which would have never expected, you know? And that takes you through different experiences, challenges as a married couple. And we had been married about a year before we moved here.
Oh, cool.
So so you can imagine the learning that has now taken place. But through all of that, we've become stronger, we've become closer, and just happier, to be honest with you. Just looking forward to life, excited about the challenges and the potential that this country and the environment has to offer.
Yeah, cool.
So yeah, I'll let you jump into this.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you've covered quite a lot of angles there, which is good. Yeah, there was sort of like 2-3 points that I wanted to add as well. I mean, it's interesting. You mentioned that story about the NBA player, and also particularly Kobe, because Kobe seen as someone that was really successful. And before you, I think last week I was I did a podcast with a guy called Tawanda Chiwira, and he's like a former Olympian for Zimbabwe. He did 400 meters and competed in the World Championships and Olympics.
Sorry, just to correct you, he's an Olympian, as he said, not former.
Yes. Although technically he will be viewed as a former Olympian, but as you rightfully say, once an Olympian, always an Olympian. That's very
always
true.
An Olympian.
And so thinking about Kobe, there was a story that Shaquille O'Neal shared, and you might be familiar with it, where he talked where Shaquille and Kobe had it wasn't an altercation as such, but as you said, Kobe was such an achiever. I mean, when we look at people that the way I look at it anyway, I'd like to call supreme mental health strength. I'm not a psychologist or anybody sort of a professional to come up with the correct title, but I always, from what I saw from Kobe, obviously it was in the TV, he just looked like a person that just was never fazed by anything mentally. But I remember when Shaq was sharing a story about this is kind of how Kobe was as an athlete, or as an overcomer, whatever you look at it, whether it be mental or physical. And he said for one particular game or something that people will say, Shaq's teammates, Shaq and Kobe's teammates were saying, oh, Kobe's not passing the ball. And Shaq was like, it got to a stage where Shaq obviously had to talk to him, because Shaq was seen as the guy who was the mediator, the guy who was able to talk to anybody in the team. So he said, oh, okay, I'll talk to him. And then Shaq went over to Kobe and said, Kobe, you got to pass the ball. And then he went for a while, and then he still wasn't doing it. And then Shaq went back to him and he's just like, come on, Kobe, we're a team. And no, what did he say? Kobe, Shaq said, there's no I in team. And then Kobe said, yeah, but there's an M-E in that, mother. You can, you can work out what I was trying to say. But I was like, I was like, Shaq is right, but actually Kobe is also 100% right in the sense. Yes, it's a team game, but there's an M-E in there. So, if I'm not to say that he was the one doing all the work, but Kobe, I can't remember what Shaq said about that game, but I think Kobe was one of the highest scoring score. He had one of the highest scores from an individual in that particular game, and it got me thinking in a way. It was just like, but actually, sometimes that's how we have to look at our mental health. So whether you're transitioning from, like yourself, from another country, or when you look at certain people that maybe suffering in this lockdown and stuff, and just kind of thinking, oh, it's just like, I mean, I know some of them are probably having drowning and depressed feelings, and it's like it's me, but actually when you look at sort of overcoming that, it's just, you do have to, and I have to be careful here, because I don't want to sort of make it sound like I'm trying to prescribe to people about how they overcome their depression and stuff like that, but it's like, literally sometimes that's how you have to look at it, and sometimes that's how I look at it. And for me personally, working from home as well and having a daughter, and my wife is a key worker, so she works within the NHS. So sometimes I'm by myself at home, doing with my work, and I ask myself, how did I overcome some of the challenges? Because actually, when I look back at the first lockdown, like you were talking about, March last year, it was difficult. It was really difficult because my daughter, that's the time when schools closed, so everything closed. So it was like literally, and then we had to do a new campaign for my charity, and I was like, how am I going to do this with having a 5-year-old? But as you and me know, because we're from a similar background, like Southern Africa, and it's like the way we were raised up, it's just, there wasn't really that thing about like, oh, mental health is a thing. It's just like what's wrong with you? Get on with it. You either get smacked in the head as a child, or you get told to just get on with it, because that's what life was, and that's what life is in Southern Africa. It's not too much of this kind of like, even to talk to them about mental health. I mean, some of them will just look at you like you're mad. So it was like, I feel
what
like,
is that?
yeah, what is that? What doesn't make sense? Get on with it. But it was like, for me, I felt like part of that culture, that growing up, was kind of what spurred me through that, because that's kind of how I was always been brought up. You've just got to get on with it. And it's actually not until, I think maybe when then the lockdown, because I think when that lockdown for about, was it 3-4 months? 3 or 4 months. And then the lockdown got eased, and then kids kind of started going back to school. And then, you know what? I sat back. I can't remember what it was. There was one moment, like, I just sat down and I was just like, man, that was tough. Like, I didn't feel like I wanted to cry, but it was just like, there was something on my heart that was just like, if I can imagine that's how it was for me, how must have been for others. So so it was just like looking at that and sort of like the professional sport aspect, and just kind of making it also appeal to me. And then just your other point where you say about like men don't talk, why should we? Someone else I know as well had an interesting answer to that as well, when he said, because this is something that we hear a lot from women. And again, I'm not trying to create a women versus men thing, but this is the reality. You and me were both married, and I'm sure to an extent we've had that said, because sometimes as men we don't talk about emotions just the way women do. Women are more fluid, they're more free when it comes to the emotions. Men were a bit more logical. Should I share this? Should I share that? No, maybe I'll just keep it to myself for now, because I don't feel the sense.
Or at least we think we're being logical.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But so this friend of mine said, what did he say? He said, it's not that men don't talk. We do, but there's just, I can't remember exactly what he said, but I think the point he tried to make was that it's not that men don't talk. We do. We just don't do it sometimes with women, or sometimes we just don't do it as open, something like that.
So if I could add, I think it sounds similar to what somebody once said, is like, we're selective also about what we talk about.
Yeah.
And who we talk to it. So we do talk, but maybe just selective of when and who will express ourselves. And it's also just about, I think, the confidence.
Yeah.
Because we as men don't want to be seen as soft or exposed. You don't want to be exposed. And I think that's what the biggest fear with some guys is. But once you get over that fear is normal. Being scared is normal. Being uncomfortable is normal. Being unsure is normal. Those things happen, and it's all about confidence. And especially once we start losing confidence as men, then we're very difficult, in a sense, honestly, to deal with, I think. So I feel sorry for women at times, especially when a guy's things are not going well, in particular, right? And they don't have the confidence to deal with that outside world. The first people who tend to suffer are the ones that are closest to them. And who tends to be that?
That's true.
The women around us.
The
women around us will bear that brunt. If it's not your wife, it's maybe your mother or your sister or whoever you're close to. You know what I mean? They might get your frustrations. They might get your outbursts, whatever it is that you might do as a result of not being confident. And confidence leads to also happiness and. So I think that's something we need to, in a sense, work on.
So but I wanted to ask you one other thing. Was obviously you talked about your like the transition, like coming into into the UK and stuff, because some people will look at that and be like, oh wow, you've like you've adapted quite quickly or quite naturally or well. You mentioned obviously the relationship, the open relationship that you have with your wife, which to be honest, which every person should have. But we know that that's not necessarily true to some people, because I've heard stories of, some people that have struggled in this lockdown because they're not used to, like, basically the office has been their escape, from their wives, from their homes, and stuff like that. So I know you talked about the good relationship that you have with the wife, and as I said, everybody should have that, because I mean that's what marriage is about, right? But would you say that relationship was the key in terms of you being able to just adapt, or do you just naturally see yourself as an adaptive person anyway?
I do see myself as an adaptive person, right? But I can frankly say that with the support of my wife, it's enabled me to adapt a lot easier, quicker, and so forth. Right. So I mean, we've been through our challenges, that's how you build to where we've been, to this point where this relationship is, and we can communicate openly as we do. Look, when you move to somewhere, for example, and I was not working, she had employment before we came here. Right. So me personally, like, I didn't have a job. There's now time to search. And sometimes what we do is part of our identity. It's part of what our purpose is. Mm. So when you're not getting some of the stuff that you want, it's a frustration that happens, right? Because I'm not frustrated and saying I need to deliver, you're the man, I need to. But with my wife and I would sit and say, right, we have a plan, right? So in the sense of whatever, we are covered for this period. So there's actually no need for us or you or anybody to be stressing. You know what I mean? If you can see I'm getting frustrated maybe with some of the lack of responses, or what I tended to find when I first got here was the disrespectful responses I got from some of the recruiters, because I was coming from Africa. Was like, I mean, somebody asked me to, for example, do you have an English name? I'm like, wow, how in this world, day and age, do you ask a person that? Actually, if you're going to ask me that, please, I don't want to continue this conversation with you, And it happened on 2 or 3 occasions, just because I'm coming from Africa. My accent is not the same as here, and I'm not trying to change it. Some people say maybe try and no. Why should we do that? So you have to do all of that.
I don't really see like, I mean, sorry to cut you off, but I don't even really see an issue with your accent. Like, I'm British born, but I grew up in Zimbabwe. But I've always had a very natural balance between English and and Shona in Zimbabwe. So sometimes people can figure me out. Sometimes people can't figure me out. So I always find that strange when people say that about accents. But sorry, continue, please.
Yeah, look, the accent thing, sometimes it's a positive, other times it's a negative. If you walk into a shop and you're talking to someone, they're like, oh, where are you from? The accent sounds different. Cool, it's a conversation. Then some people will ask you what you do. And the moment you say you work in a bank, oh, at least you're here doing something proper. At least you're here adding to the... I'm like, wait a minute. Like, we started off nicely. I think now this is totally offside. I found that disrespectful. Like, I mean, come on. Like, what are you saying about other individuals? Doesn't mean because somebody's here and doesn't have a top job, they're not trying. Sometimes it's about people like you giving a person an opportunity. You know what I mean? Because you're already thinking, because you come from somewhere, they're lesser or whatever. Like, people have just so many issues that you have to kind of deal with. But I was fortunate, like I'll say, when I started working, I got into a place where, funny enough, my boss was South African. So it was pretty cool, and culturally we got to understand each other, and it was a nice help to adjust. But the rest of the team was quite well, British born guys. But what I found also quite helpful at the time, what I found also quite helpful at the time was, because of, as I said, because of being open, and I easily adapt and just talk to people, right? People did start opening up to me a lot easier. And then they'll start telling you stories about you. I've never worked with a guy from Africa like you. Or they've never worked with a black African. And it's, you know what I mean? Like, that's when I was like, okay. And they're like, but we've never worked. All we see is the guys on TV. And I'm like, you know what? At least fair enough. You're coming to me and you are, you're saying it from a point of, you want you to learn more. right? Because some would say the comparison we get on TV is that African men are just aggressive and or violent, and especially coming from South Africa. So, you know, when I meet you, I'm just like, but that's not the case. I'm like, well, the problem is people watch too much TV and just believe in TV. Have you ever given yourself an opportunity to try and engage with somebody from a different culture? And I think that's where you miss it sometimes. And I mean, I did a lot of work on diversity and inclusion there. And, you know, fair enough, some of the questions you got were just like, okay, I've been in the UK a year now. When I see a program on Africa, it's a kid with flies all over his face and people asking for donations. Now that's all you're seeing. Or you're watching some program which doesn't really show you the good side. It will show you the crime or the incidents of crime that have happened. But you take the time to say to yourself, let me learn more. So I would teach people Zulu, for example, on Ndebele, whichever one I found would be easier during our team meeting, just as a way to kind of bridge the gap between us and say, this is my culture and I'm strong. So when I'd walk into a meeting, I'd greet the guys, Salwanani, and some people would start, Unjani, you know, and they're like, cool, we're getting somewhere.
What did you say?
What did you exactly? So you'd get then people saying, okay, please just send me this greeting. So that kind of helped, you know, and because I'm not too shy, I'll be like, see, that guy was talking nonsense. This is the right way to go about it. So yeah, adapting easily. The wife, very helpful in that. And I think because of challenges we've experienced, and I'm sure at some point we'll touch on some of the challenges, it's helped us just build and get closer. You know. Yeah. So I find that.
And I think you're right. I think it's because my wife has had something similar, you know, in terms of when you look at looking at people's background, and she's had people sort of say certain things to her because of perceptions, whatever those perceptions were. Yes. So sometimes when she's opened her mouth, speaking to people that are from a different background as her, so, you know, non-black, you know, she's British, she was born here. So when she said she's had instances where she's opened her mouth and people have been like surprised, be like, oh, you know, you speak English well. And it's like, and I don't know whether it's because in the area that we live in, and I'm not going to mention the name because I don't want people to start thinking, what are you trying to say about us and stuff like that. But, you know, it's, and it reminds me of something also that Denzel Washington says, although he meant it more about the press, you know, when he said something like, you know, if you watch the news, you're misinformed. Or if you don't watch it, you're uninformed. So it's like sometimes television is all they have, and people form an opinion on just certain things. Because sometimes what people will do, whether it's press or advertising and stuff like that, they'll show something that's not a true reflection of the world we live in or where those people come from. So it's like, and you know, and I think sometimes that's a struggle. I mean, fortunately for me, I like, you know, when I hear people's stories and stuff, is sometimes I'm a bit surprised because I think to myself, well, why hasn't that happened to me? But it's probably happened to people differently, because some things that are said or done, or some things that are even not said are, you know, are done in different ways. Sometimes you can say a lot by not saying anything,